Hey everybody, I'm Miss Abby and I'm going to talk to you today about embryology. Embryology is the study of chicks and the study of how they grow inside eggs, all right? Today we're going to talk about eggs. We're going to talk about how they're formed inside the chicken and the different parts of the eggs, all right? So first thing we're going to talk about is how the eggs are formed. So this is what it looks like inside of a chicken. You can see all the organs and how they're put together inside of the chicken, okay? Now, when we have eggs, eggs are inside of a chicken and they are in the ovary, okay? Ovaries are part of the reproductive system of chickens because eggs are baby chicks. So eggs are how they reproduce. Now, ovaries look like kind of a cluster of grapes inside the chickens, okay? And these ovaries have eggs inside of them. But the chicken will only lay one egg every day, okay? So when an egg is ready to be laid, it's going to leave that ovary and it's going to move into what's called the oviduct. And the oviduct is like a long tube that connects the ovary to the cloaca, which is kind of the butt of the chicken, I guess. But it's where the egg is actually laid, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about how that moves. So here we see that ovary that's inside the chicken. It looks like a cluster of grapes, right? Looks like a bunch of grapes. So once an egg is ready to be laid, it moves out of that ovary into the oviduct and it starts to get a little bit bigger. You can see that it starts to form some of those parts, and down here you can see that yolk inside and you can see that egg white that's around the outside, okay? And it keeps moving and keeps getting a little bit bigger until it gets to this final area where it is fertilized, all right? And that means that it's going to turn into a baby chick, or if it's not fertilized, that's where it sits, and that's where the shell is actually formed, okay? The shell is the very last thing that is formed on an egg. Because if it was formed at the very beginning, it would make it very hard for it to move through that chicken. It might hurt the chicken. So the shell is the last thing that's formed right before it's laid. Here you can see what that egg looks like as it travels through that oviduct, okay? As it starts to develop a little bit. It looks like in this picture that these are all egg yolks, but this is not actually just the egg yolk. What you see, that kind of orange part, or the yellow part that looks like the yolk, is actually a membrane that's around the outside of the egg that's keeping it together, that's keeping everything inside of that egg. And that membrane is going to be right inside that shell. So we start out with the little bitty egg yolk, and then it starts to get bigger, just like we saw in the last picture as it travels through that oviduct. And then at the very last one, you can see that shell is starting to be formed. And it doesn't look very hard or anything because it's just starting to be formed in that oviduct. So then once that egg is ready, that shell will get really hard, and then that's when the chicken will lay the egg. All right, you've got a worksheet that has the parts of an egg on it. Okay, so if you want to fill that out as we go, we're going to talk about the different parts of the egg and how they work together and what they do. All right, so if you were to crack open an egg, you would see different parts of the egg, but mostly what you would notice is just that yolk and the egg white, okay? There's a lot more parts to the egg than that, but those are the most obvious parts, and those are the parts that everybody knows, okay? So the first thing that we're going to label is that yolk, and that line is pointing directly to the middle. So that yellow part in the middle of the egg, that's the egg yolk. All right. And then the next part, we're going to go ahead and get those two out of the way, the egg white. Now, the egg white is also called the albumin. And the albumin is what surrounds that yolk. It's the white part of the egg. It looks kind of clear when you crack an egg open. All right, now the next thing we're going to talk about is the chalazi. The chalazi is these little twisted parts, and those kind of act like seat belts, okay? They keep that yolk in the middle of the egg. They keep everything in place, all right? If you were to crack an egg open, you may not be able to see the chalazi, but they're there. If you were to cut open an egg like halfway, like this sheet shows, then you might be able to see them a little more than if you were to just crack open an egg, okay? All right, next we're going to talk about the germinal disc. So the germinal disc is this little bitty white spot that's on the yolk of the egg. You might see that when you crack open an egg. That germinal disc is where the baby chick starts to develop, all right, if it's fertilized. Now, the eggs that you buy in the grocery store are not fertilized eggs. The eggs that you buy in the grocery store will not turn into baby chicks. Even if you put them in a warm nest and you keep them warm and put them in an incubator, they will not grow into baby chicks because they have not been fertilized, okay? That germinal disc, if an egg has been fertilized, is where that baby chick will start to grow. It's the very beginning, okay? All right. Now let's talk a little bit about membranes. So membranes are a very thin, almost like skin, that keeps everything in place, okay? Membranes there's a couple different membranes, but what we have are little pieces of almost like skin. So if you think about when you crack an egg open, you have the shell, and then there's that little white almost skin underneath the shell that you can kind of peel away from the shell, right? That's a membrane, and that's what keeps that egg together when it's traveling through the oviduct inside the chicken, okay? Part of that membrane system also helps to create an air cell inside the egg. The air cell allows the chick to breathe inside the egg, okay? It's going to give the chicks inside the egg the right amount of air that they need to grow. And then also when those chicks are ready to hatch, they're going to peck through that air cell and breathe all of that air before they actually peck through the shell. Right. And while we're talking about membranes, we're going to talk about another certain kind of membrane that just goes around the yolk, okay? The vitelline membrane protects the yolk, and it's really hard to see, but it keeps that yolk in the middle of the egg in the shape of a circle, keeps it from getting scrambled inside that egg, okay? And last but not least, we have the shell. The shell is the hard outside of the egg that protects it and keeps the chick inside, or the egg inside, that keeps it safe, okay? Now, the shell is made of calcium. Calcium is it's a nutrient, it's a mineral that we need, and chickens need a lot of it because they're laying eggs, and these eggs all have shells, okay? So calcium can be found in milk, but it can also be found in rocks, okay? That's why a lot of times you see chickens pecking the ground or eating rocks, because they're trying to get that calcium built up in their system so that they have enough calcium to lay eggs. Now, another interesting thing about eggs is that the shell is very porous, okay? It looks like it's really solid, but it actually has thousands of little holes in it that allows the egg to breathe, okay? You can't see them with your eye, but if you put them under a microscope, you'd be able to see all of the little holes in the egg that allow them to breathe, right? All right. So that gives you all the different parts of the eggs and tells you all about what they're used for inside the egg. Now you can go ahead and color in your sheet if you want. You can color the yolk yellow and the albumin white and everything. But next time we will talk about some more stuff. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.